3, 2, 1. How you doing?
I'm doing well. How about you?
I'm doing pretty good. You're my grandpa. I'm your grandson.
That's correct.
So we're doing an interview here. What do you think? What do you make of all this? All these lights.
I think it's interesting, and all of your outline I thought was pretty good.
All right, I'm glad.
A little deep, but that's good.
Yeah, it's not bad. We try.
Yeah.
So we'll start off we'll try and do a little chronology. So we'll start off talking about your childhood. How was it? Were you, what kind of kid were you?
As I recall, maybe a little interesting because of my parents. We moved to California in 1941. I was almost 4. And we previously lived on the Blackfoot Indian Reservation, and my parents were farmers. They came down here so they could work at Lockheed Aircraft during World War II. And so you had a whole different way of life somewhat. We lived in Hollywood instead of the Indian Reservation. And because of my upbringing, I have certain things that I do. My dad was a good dad, and he wanted a son that was not a weenie. And he told me, if you ever get knocked down, get right up.
So your dad was a tough guy?
I don't know. I never saw him fight, but he wasn't a sissy. Mm-hmm. And so if I got in a fight in our front yard, my parents would stand and watch it. They didn't break it up. He says, if you get in a fight, you better be ready to stay for the whole time because we're not saving you. Mm-hmm. So it kept you from going out looking for them, but you knew that you had to take care of your own business.
So he was sort of a man's man?
Yeah.
Okay.
I broke my arm when I was 4, and then when I was 5, and then when I was 6, jumping off of high places.
Well, it's better than getting into fights, I suppose.
Yeah, right.
And your mother?
My mother was a good mother. She was grew up in, Idaho, Utah, did certain things. When I was born, they lived in Blackfoot, and my mother took the train down to Salt Lake City to have me the week before I was born, and went back to Blackfoot on the week after I was born, because that's where her doctor was, from when my sister was born, when they lived in Salt Lake City. So it wasn't like nowadays. It was a little bit different. But she was pretty grassroots and knew how to take care of herself.
And your parents stayed together?
Yes, except my dad, when World War II was over, bought a mom and pop grocery store in South Los Angeles because he'd been in the grocery business before he went back to farming. And he managed a Safeway store, and that was in 1945. In 1947, he died of a heart attack. I was 9. So my mother was pregnant at the time, and my youngest brother was born in April, the year after my dad died in November. So she took care of 4 kids, raised us, and did everything she could for us.
Tough woman.
Tough woman. And
so you were 9, were you pretty shocked by that? Were you too young to maybe understand what was going on, or did you?
No, I knew what happened. Mm-hmm. In fact, I'm the one that found him. Mm-hmm. And I had an older sister who was 13, one who was 4, and one was born after my dad died.
So it's 3 siblings?
There's 4 of us totally, 3 siblings.
Mm-hmm.
So we learned to kind of take care of stuff. She had a grocery store, and then later we moved and she did many different jobs. Mm-hmm. But basically we had to kind of do certain things. If we wanted something, we'd get a job. Mm-hmm. I mowed lawns when I was a teenager for money. I dyed shoes at a local shoe store and did a lot of things. Never had allowance. I just went and got money.
Were you a good student?
Yeah, I was, but I was not. My dad was probably more of an influence. Before he died and I was in elementary school, he took me aside as, I'll give you $1 for every A you get, and you owe me $1 for every C you get. The only thing I didn't understand was B's were neutral. So when I got a report card, I thought it was going to be loaded because I had a bunch of A's, but the B's were neutral, and I didn't really realize that the C's were going to subtract from the A's. I still had money, but not like I thought. I could have been a better student, but my mother was always very busy, and I didn't have a lot of supervision for her. I got through school, I got grades, and I didn't get in a lot of trouble, but I wasn't like the scholar of the week.
Is that how it was through high school as well?
Yeah.
Okay. Did you play any sports?
Yeah, I played my freshman year. I played water polo, but I wanted to play football. But I wasn't very big, so I waited till my junior year. I played football and baseball and basketball. In those days, you could play all three. And but then I always had a job during the summer, so it wasn't like I didn't have a dad that put me in Little League or was encouraging me, but I always will remember, number one, he gave me a pair of boxing gloves for my birthday when I was 5 and showed me what to do with them. And I was 9, and on his birthday in May, my mom said, why don't you take the day off from the store? He went out, and when he came home, he had a baseball and a bat and a glove for me. So I always knew, he said, yeah, sports were important. And he had played baseball on the Blackfoot, Idaho team for the city, and he was a catcher. So I knew what baseball was. He'd take me out, hit me fly balls, teach me to hit, teach me to bunt, do different things like that. So he was a short timer, but I always remember his part in my life.
And you sort of stuck with baseball, is that right?
Huh?
You still watch baseball, and you've loved baseball all your life?
My dad, when he had the grocery store, we raised some chickens and rabbits and stuff. This was in the 40s. And he'd go out and kill them and do them to sell them in the store, and the baseball game was always on the radio. There was no TV yet. So I knew that baseball was on the radio for him to listen to, and it was important. Yes.
And you mentioned working a lot in high school. Did you continue to work at the store, or what kind of jobs?
The store was gone by then.
Oh, okay. What
It became too much for my mother. One place I worked at a shoe store, dyed the shoes because they weren't the color everybody wanted. When I was in junior high school, the 9th grade, my friend says we could work in the cafeteria after lunchtime for our 5th period and do all the dishes. You know, they were a dishwasher and everything, but do the dishes. We made $9.50 a month from the school. We got free lunch and free snack. So my $9.50 a month went to buy a lawnmower, and I mowed lawns on the weekends with that money. And I always had money for dates and to do what I needed to do. And then my junior year, between my junior and senior year during the summer, I had a first full-time job working 8 hours a day, and I had money and I saved money. And then in high school, I ended up with 2 jobs. And my senior year of high school, I bought a brand new 1956 Ford. I was hot.
That's a sweet buy, yeah.
It was a what they call a Victoria 2-door hardtop, blue and white. I could get a girl anytime I wanted.
Speaking of which,
not get them in the wrong way.
Yeah.
You could go on a date. I had transportation. Nobody wanted a car more than me. So I had 2 jobs. One 3 to 11 loading nighttime trucks for a gas pipeline, and the other was a machine shop on Saturdays.
So you've had these jobs, or you're working 2 jobs, quite busy, and school. Did you have time for girlfriends? Did you date around and meet some girls?
During the time in February till June when I got my night job, then I went out on Saturday nights, would probably fall asleep. Sundays I'd cruise around in my car. But when school was out, I quit the night job and only had a day job. So yeah, I had time. Some things you make time for.
And your 3 siblings, growing up through high school and things, did you guys all get along?
Yes. I had a sister who watched after me since we didn't have a dad, and she was great. She made sure I was behaving, and if I was getting ready to fall apart in some way, she'd talk to me. And I think about her every morning. Now you'll think this is weird. We're going to seminary, and that started at 6:30 in the morning, and it was in the early spring. It was my 9th grade year, and she had a Model A Ford she was driving. We had picked up a young lady my age, cute, and I thought, cool. So we're sitting at a stop sign, and she looks over at me and she says, "Derryl, your ears are dirty." I have never forgotten that. Every morning I scrub my ears. But she was a great sister. She'd help me out in buying stuff, clothes, and different things for me. And tell me a little bit about what I should do. But she had 4 sons. One's a general he's a full colonel in the Air Force. He's a doctor. One's a big-time CPU. One's a high school principal, and one's an engineer. So she did well with her kids. Actually, better than she did with me. She knew what they were doing. We would joke about that. I'd say, "I know what you guys are going through." I did. No. And my younger brothers, I watched after them. Took them everywhere I went. If I went on a date to the high school football game, they were in the back seat.
Great. So after high school, what happens then?
I worked in a tool making machine shop until I went on a mission for the church. And the car that I had bought, just for your information, was $2,600, brand new, and it was not the cheap model. So when I went on a mission, I sold it, and it paid for my 2.5 years in Argentina as a missionary for the church. When I got home, I had enough money left to buy a 55 Pontiac Catalina, 2-door hardtop red.
Woo! And how would you characterize the mission? How was it?
It was great. You learn to speak Spanish. You learn to work hard every day. The last 6 months of my missionary, I was like, the mission president would have what they called a traveling elder, and you traveled around to every place where there were missionaries, worked with them and reported and encouraged them. And I was able to travel around the whole country of Argentina twice in 6 months, everywhere the church had a branch.
It's a great opportunity.
Good opportunity. You learned a lot. You knew a lot of people. The main thing, not the main thing, but one thing you learned, United States, it's pretty great. Dang great.
Good place to be.
That was the days when nobody had central air heating. In Argentina, it was colder than heck in the winter, hotter than heck in the summer, and they might have had a kerosene stove somewhere in the house. But it was different. But it was good.
Mm-hmm. So you return from the mission, grateful to be back, and you pick up the slick red car, and then what then?
Then I was working and going to get into school, but you also, in those days, I'd been a little kid when World War II went on, because I was born in 1938, and it was over in 45. The Korean War started around 49, was over in 55, so I saw a war there, and Vietnam was getting ready. So you were really draft eligible when you came home from mission. I was almost 23. And so I went in the Army for 6 months active duty, and then you had 6 years of active reserve. So I got home from my mission, signed up for the Army, and I was in the Army for 6 months training. And then I came home and got into school and got more serious about getting hooked up with Sue.
So when did you meet Sue?
Huh?
When did you meet Sue?
I had met her way back in 1956. Her aunt lived in our ward. When they'd had activities, beach parties, she and her sisters would come. And my friend and I took Lorraine, and he took Sue once skin diving. But she was living there in Downey when I came home. And I had a girl that waited for me while I was on my mission, but it wasn't going to really work out. She was up at BYU and I was down here, and started dating with Sue and a few others, and it all boiled down to Sue.
And you were going to school where?
Cerritos College.
Okay. Where did you study?
But I didn't finish. I had certain things I wanted to do business-wise, and I was able to get into it. And so I thought, okay, I'm married, I want to have kids, and now I'm doing that. I never had been pushed or taught like now your parents teach you how important it was, and so I did not.
So you're dating Sue and you're in school. You guys get married and you leave school.
Yeah.
And when was that?
1962, February.
And what year are you in school?
First year.
Your first year, okay. And so you leave to get into some business. What? Tell me about that.
I wanted to get in life insurance business. I'd wanted to get into that for a long time, way before. And so I did. And then later on, I decided I didn't like it that great, but that was life. Oh.
So how long did you do that?
Actually, close to 30 years.
Oh, okay.
And then I got a securities license for stocks and mutual funds and everything like that also during the same time.
So you were also being a broker?
Yeah.
Nice. Tell me a little more about, you marry Sue, you leave, we just skipped over 30 years.
Yeah.
Anything, right? So you marry Sue, and how soon after? I'm going to pause for a second.
Okay.
I'm just looking at this.
While you're pausing, speak a little louder because I'm deaf.
Gotcha. So you marry Sue, and how soon after that do you guys start having children?
We got married on February 10th of 1962. Your mother was born July 7th, 1963.
Right.
Highlight of my life. And maybe you just need to know that I always thought I would have boys, but the day she was born, the Dodgers won a doubleheader.
It was destiny, maybe.
And your mother and I do talk about that still. Yeah, it wasn't a disappointment at all, but I always listened while I was out working. I had my car radio on a Dodger game. If it was on TV, I watched it. If it was going on, I was watching it. And actually, the Dodgers moved to Los Angeles in 1958, and I was gone from 1958 to 1960, so I missed the first 2 years. But because you're a dad, now I also became an Angel fan.
So Shelley's born, and this is your first child. Tell me about that.
Our first house, when we were engaged and getting ready to get married, a friend of mine came and said, my dad has a house that he wants to sell. We had grown up together, and he had built a one-bedroom house next door to his in Downey for a rental, but he had moved to Washington and he wanted to sell it. So we bought that house for $5,500, $300 down. Payments were $55 a month. And we moved in and we painted it and did everything, and it wasn't that old. And we lived in that till after your mother was born. And then we were able to sell it for $8,000 in 1 year, which was a lot then, and move into a bigger house. And then later, we moved out of that bigger house into a bigger house, and then later into this house, which is a bigger house. So I actually had to save $300 to get into any house. Mm-hmm. And every time we made money and had enough to move into the next place.
So you moved into your first bigger house after Shelley was born, right? And how soon after was the second child?
Oh, then that was the second house. The third house was in 1968, so that was 5 years. Mm-hmm. And then we moved into the last house in 1976.
Who's the second oldest?
Susan.
So what's the age difference between Shelley and Susan?
17 months.
Oh, okay. So, you moved into the second house after Shelley was born.
Yeah.
And did Susan live there as well?
Susan lived there as well.
And Robin?
Robin lived there as well. She was born in May of 68, and we moved to the third house in October.
For the record, I'm not clear on the, what's the order? So Shelley,
Susan, Robin, Melanie, and Tricia.
All right, so 5 daughters.
And Tricia was born in the third house.
And what's the age difference between Shelley and Tricia? Shelley's
10 years.
10 years, so she's 73?
Shelley was born in
63,
and Tricia was born in 73.
So 5 daughters. I figure by the end you were thinking.
I thought there's no boys.
Son, yeah.
Forget it.
Mm-hmm.
Short hose, weak pump.
All right. Let's think what else. So for most of your working life, it sounds like you did life insurance. You did some brokering.
Yeah.
For securities. How did you, because I know now that you work a lot with these long arm quilting machines.
Okay, after I got tired of that, I got involved with brokering aircraft parts. Mm-hmm. Airlines, if they need a part, a valve, anything, they don't go to Boeing or any company, they go to brokers. Mm-hmm. So they're all over the world, and they have to be certified, traceable to their birth, and you do that. And that was good. And after 9/11, mm-hmm. when, the big bombing, aircraft into the big towers, mm-hmm. the airlines were parking their planes and they were not paying their bills, and brokers were going broke. Mm-hmm. So I took a week off at Easter to go to sand dunes. When I came back, the doors were closed. So I figured, okay, that's enough. I'm old enough. I'll quit. Mm-hmm. And then a guy came and said, how about if you get in the elevator business? And that was selling, not fixing them. Okay. And I did that until I was approached by a person, Gina, who was your mother's roommate in college. Gina Halliday came and said, I want to become a dealer for long arm quilting machines, but I need somebody that's mechanical to fix them. Mm-hmm. Guess what? I'm 82 years old and I'm still doing that. But it's not full time. Mm-hmm. It's part time, and it's great. Gets me out of the house.
Stay busy.
And, it's not like I could get along, but it's just extra money and it makes life comfortable. And you got money to answer phone calls from certain other people. Mm-hmm. So, and it's interesting. You deal with women, but they're all old.
Mm-hmm. Let's think. I feel like we covered a huge age range there for a second. What am I missing from getting married to today, what sort of big events? So, you mentioned the sand dunes.
Yeah.
Tell me a little bit about the sand dunes and Mammoth Pools and how that became such a family
Sand dunes and Mammoth Pools are not necessarily related.
Okay.
At church, I had 14 to 16-year-old boys, and in April of 1971 at Easter, we decided to go down to the sand dunes because my brother-in-law was down there with a buggy, and I took all of them down there, and we rode in the dunes and decided to come home and build a buggy. And that we did. The first buggy was on the sand for $300. We scavenged everything, and some of the guys I still go dooning with were my boys then that were 14 years old. Mm-hmm. They all have 6 kids, and all of them go, and still going. You know, all that time. And Mammoth Pools in 1977 had an opportunity to buy a boat and a motorhome, and I still have the boat. It's out in the garage, and I have a different motorhome. But we have gone to Mammoth Pools and other lakes and to the river and water skiing with many, many people over the years. I probably have at least 150 to 200 people have learned to ski behind my boat.
That sounds about right. We're coming up almost on 50 years of Mammoth Pools.
That's right. We started going in 1972. And then after I got the boat in 77, we went to Mammoth Pools in 79. And then we would alternate with that and a different lake, and the last 20 probably all Mammoth Pools. Mm-hmm. And most of the grandkids enjoy it.
That boat certainly is iconic. It's a famous boat.
And you know what? After that many years, it's 43 years old. And if you go out there, it still looks like new.
That is right. You've taken care of it for sure.
Try to.
So yeah, you're a mechanic of sorts. How did that start? Because when I think of people I know that can fix a whole lot of stuff, that know a lot about, engines and things like this.
Okay, when I grew up and my dad had died, at church in my ward, what you had amongst grown men that are starting families, most of them were veterans of World War II. Our bishop at church was a plastering contractor. My other leader was a lathing contractor. You had electrical contractors, plumbing people. Every blue-collar skill was represented. So since I didn't have a dad to fix everything at the house, my mom would call one of them and they'd come over and say, "Here, I'll show you how to do it. Now you do it." The mechanical end I learned after I started building a buggy and boats and that. Some of the people who are in business doing it are just quick and dirty. They just want to get it out, and if it breaks, they'll take it back and charge you to fix it. So I just started taking care of that. And I built a lot of boat motors for my friends, and a lot of Volkswagens and turbocharged Subarus now, and I built all my own stuff.
Can you describe for me your boat?
Yeah, it's an 18-foot jet boat. It's red and white and blue. Has a big block Chevrolet in it. It's probably 85, 9-mile boat. I love it. I like it. Sue claims it. It's my idol. I don't put it there. I have other idols. Some of them, one of them's you. Okay. But we enjoy it. And probably when I go to Mammoth Pools every summer, the highlight of that week is when I go early in the morning with all the big boys. Because I always needed boys. And I've had boys at church forever.
You've had boys at church, and with the extended family, there's no shortage of boys that look up to you and love spending time with you.
No, we get along.
Describe those early morning. What are you talking about with the early morning ski trips? Or I know about them, but tell me a little more.
Well, we get up and we leave at 7 and we go down because the lake is absolutely smooth, no ripples, so we can ski on absolutely smooth water. And we'll go out for a couple hours. All the boys will ski once or twice or whatever. Then we'll go back and eat breakfast, and everybody else will finally be getting up and taking part in whatever their day is. Then we'll go back down the lake and just kind of cool it and tube or do whatever. But we can go down and act like boys. You know, we can bag on each other.
Tell stories.
If tell stories, yep. And if they do well, we can cheer, and if they do poorly on their skiing, we can jeer, right? Mm-hmm. Yeah, they pay the price.
I'll put in. I'm gonna put some pictures of the boat in. And
yeah.
Are you comfortable? Do you want water?
No, I'm fine.
Okay. And then before we get to sort of maybe more esoteric topics, tell me a little bit about, what's your life like now? In general.
Basically, growing old is not what people used to say golden years. Because you get old, your body hurts, you're not like what you were, you have more time on your hands, and sometimes you're just getting along. But you're enjoying life, and you have stuff to do, but it's not like being young. Raising a family, since we had 5 daughters, every one of them was a little bit different, and some were more challenging than others. Some still are more challenging than others. Probably the upside, because of our activity in the church and the things which we're taught, we try to talk about being obedient, and that's the same thing I have to keep trying to do now in my life, about being obedient and being a husband, being a father, a grandfather, and actually a great-grandfather. And it's all part of a plan where we can all be together. And you look forward to seeing all your family. At Mammoth Pools, we have 30 plus there every year. And it's a highlight of the year because we're all together and we act like we really do like one another.
Mammoth Pools really is incredible, just to come out and see all the beautiful faces of such a great family. And no family's perfect, but it seems like we've got a pretty good one.
It's going good. It's going good. We have good people, good contribution of bloodlines, right?
Yeah, it's so true, yeah.
Not as good as they should have been. My life, one of your questions was, in your life overall, there's a lot of things I could have improved upon. But there's a lot of things I could have screwed up on.
That's right. Let me ask that question. So what you're saying is, they say that when people do regret things about their life, they regret the things they didn't do more than they regret the things they did do. Do you think that's true?
Yeah. If I'd have continued on at school, but I would have deferred getting married probably, I think. I'd have said, no, I got to wait. But by the time I came home from Argentina on a mission, I was 23. And in those days, people got married. Number one, you were a prime prospect for the draft in the military. And so if you were, actually, I was enrolled, I was in a critical occupation that dealt with space. And I was in college also full-time, and I was teaching seminary. But I thought, I grew up, John Wayne was my hero. And you saw a lot of military movies and you saw a lot of war movies, and you knew that we had something to protect. And I thought, no, I'll go in the military and I'll do 6 months, and I'm on active reserve, and I could get called up, but I never was. So you had things that you would have done better, but it wasn't terrible. married life, sometimes it was a struggle because maybe you didn't have as much money as you wanted. But here we are.
Made it.
We made it.
That's right.
And you could have, could have done better, could have done worse. Mm-hmm. But I had activities in my life that were worthwhile, and I contributed to other people's lives sometimes, and I don't think I was a deterrent to other people in their lives. But I have a lot of friends, a lot of sons.
That's right.
And then I'm, had 5 girls, but I had a lot of sons. Not to discount the value of my girls.
Mm-hmm. It's hard to say how much luck plays a role in one's life, but can you think of some of your luckiest moments?
Yeah. This goes back to a way old story, and I tell it frequently these days. You get old, you tell a lot of old stories.
We love to hear them.
I was very lucky because of church activity, because when I was 14, I could have really fallen apart. There were 5 boys lived on my street, and they were not very obedient young men, and people we went to school with, I could have really fallen apart. But I had people that cared about me, adult men, that helped me a lot, watched after me, told me what to do, what not to do, and helped me through. All right? And I had teachings that told me certain things not to do in terms of being a good active member of the church.
Like the word of wisdom?
Word of wisdom, morality, chastity, and doing things. Okay? I'll tell you a story, because it was a learning experience. I always went to church. My social activity was around there. I played high school sports, but I didn't hang out with all the guys because we had a large group of boys at church that were athletes who were different things. We could hang out. Didn't get tempted with all of the other stuff. So one time at a stake conference, which was 4 times a year, at our stake center in Huntington Park, had a great big patio. And it was generally crowded, so we didn't want to take up a space inside and have somebody have to sit outside. Mm-hmm. You know what I'm saying, right?
Yeah.
So we're sitting out there, and at the end, I'm walking over, and the man who was the stake president looks at me, and he had an apostle. The general authority was right with him, as high as it goes in the church. He says, "Hey, Derryl, come here." And he says to the man, he says, "I want to see a young man. He's had 100% attendance," and I did, for 5 years in a row. You know what the man said to me?
What?
Was that as an inner or an outer? Was I just occupying space, and was I there? Or was I an inner? Was I really contributing, taking part? He didn't have to explain it. And I stopped and I thought, you know what? I'll bet you there's a lot of times I'm an outer. And matter of fact, today we were sitting out on the patio in the sunshine instead of being in the meeting. But we were there, right? Mm-hmm. And then a few months later, I heard another talk that was highly beneficial about if you really want something, and if you want to succeed, do all the things that you should do, and the Lord will bless you. And my life changed a lot, and the Lord blessed me a lot. So the things, because I will tell you, I'm not inherently a really good person. As in, I can see temptation, I can see other ways of life, and I can be rowdy. I think. Maybe not as rousy as I thought, but I knew a time in my life when I could have totally fallen apart, and I had every excuse, to do it.
You stayed on the straight and narrow.
So the straight and narrow, and try to behave and do the things I should have did, and that contributed to my life as much as anything else I could have done. Have a happy life. I have great kids, and I can talk to them any day of the week, right?
That's right.
I have grandsons I can call on their birthday.
That's right.
Right?
Oh, yeah.
Special people in my life. And I know a lot of people that don't have that. Maybe they have a lot of money, but they don't have all of that.
You mentioned that talk about if you really want something, go get it type of thing.
Yeah.
Can you maybe think of a time in your life where you wanted something and it may be one of the hardest things you've had to try and fight to get?
Oh, yeah. Well, maybe you thought you wanted total financial success. I will not tell you that I ever had total, absolute financial success.
Mm-hmm.
But we didn't starve, and we had stuff. But that happens through a lot of times maybe your own weaknesses.
Mm-hmm.
But you have things that, and there are times probably where I'm not the nicest husband in town. Oh, she's not in here. She'd tell you that.
Mm-hmm. We'll ask her.
Huh?
We'll ask her.
But I'm here.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And everything in life is not easy. And I always tell young people, when you get married, you know nothing about each other unless you're taking them camping. No, we don't know everything. That when we were going together and engaged, I was teaching seminary, which I had to get up at 5:30. Then I went to school, and then I worked 35 hours a day. And so I was busy. Then I'd go, and at 10 o'clock, I'd say, I'm going home, going to bed. Well, no, you don't need that much sleep. Why do you have to go home and go to bed at 10 o'clock? I said, because. I thought, where does she get all that energy? We got married, I come home, and she's on the couch taking a nap. I said, what are you doing? I always take about an hour and a half nap right after work. She's coming home taking a nap every day and telling me I'm a wimp because I got to go home at 10 o'clock at night. I'm not a napper. I don't just want to come home and take a nap. I want to go do something. So there's things you learn afterwards, and maybe you don't agree with everything that your spouse does, but they don't want to agree with everything you do. So you try to work at it and just stay being happy and moving ahead. And married couples have issues, right?
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes you think, holy smokes, why is this an issue? But they are.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no relationship is perfect. Everyone's got different things they like and don't like.
Yeah. But if you looked at another female and they look like they are everything you think that you wanted, you'd find out, no, they didn't.
Yeah.
See, I really didn't want a Nordstrom shopper, right? No, life is interesting. Everything may not always be perfect, but it can be great. Mm-hmm. And you work at it. And you look at your own children and their parenting. See, I always tell your mother, you want to be sure that your boys get everything that you never got. Because to her, we were always poor. Mm-hmm. We only had a boat and a motorhome and a buggy, and we went on vacation, but we were poor. We had some neighbors around the corner that really had some bucks. And you know what? They each had 6 kids, and 4 of them went down the toilet.
That's how it goes sometimes. So
it's interesting in life when you place, but I said, you and your brother, I would say, were very well taken care of.
Yeah, we lucked out. We had the best of both worlds.
That's right.
Todd and Shelley. But enough about me.
Huh?
I said enough about me.
Oh, well, but see, about you is also about me. And certain things that your parents knew and did were same things that I'm trying to do.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not as easy as it looks.
Mm-hmm. You spoke a little bit about some marriage and some advice you might give to young couples. What would you say to Derryl, who just came back from his mission? What advice would you give him?
It's hard to say. You could have said, see, in those days, people got married right away.
Mm-hmm.
But it would be easy to say, hang loose a little bit and wait and really and take care of more things if you could. Getting married right away it was a year. We dated for a year. But in those days, sometimes people did not wait anywhere near that, not like now.
Mm-hmm.
So people probably are more involved in looking at everything that's going to go on in the future, graduating, get involved, get stable, do all of this. Then it was get married, start a family, have some kids, start having all this happiness.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes it wasn't that easy, because you had a lot of different things. You had no idea what each other was like.
Mm-hmm.
Really.
Mm-hmm.
You knew they were a good kisser. Okay.
Yeah.
Or you were trying to teach them.
Mm-hmm. So I just have now just more questions about certain stuff in general. So you're in the military for a bit, but you didn't go into combat.
No.
Right? And you talked a little bit about, kind of, rough and tumble play and stuff as a child. Have you had any notable encounters with real violence?
No. Maybe.
Good
More
eyes.
when up to junior high school, you'd get in fights.
Mm-hmm.
After that, not really. Maybe in a sporting event, you might get knocked down and people jump up. But see, my dad always told me, and it got me in trouble, if you get knocked down, get up. So if I was playing basketball and I got knocked down, I would get up right away. And they thought I was getting up to retaliate. It wasn't. I just get up. Don't lay there. And that's why I tell some of my grandsons, I could never play soccer.
Mm-hmm.
Right? You got to lay there and writhe in pain and
Yeah.
act like you're dead. If you get knocked down or barely brushed, no. Real violence, no.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's all the better.
Right.
Right, that's something, that's good for you.
No, it doesn't get you anywhere, and especially today,
Mm-hmm.
because you don't know
Yeah.
what's going on.
Yeah, how do you... Obviously, there's lots of changes, right, that you've seen over the years, like technology and politics and all these things. What do you think is something that's changed, from, say, when you were a teenager to the lives of the teenagers in our family? What do you think has changed that people don't really realize, Everyone can point to, now you've got computers or you're on your smartphones. But what's something that you see that has changed?
Okay,
that they
one
don't
of
realize?
the things would be your exposure to life and to temptation. For example, when I was a teenager, every movie was G-rated. So you could go pick up a girl for a date. You could go in her house, and her mother would say, "Oh, where are you going tonight?" I said, "Oh, we're going to a drive-in movie." Well, all the cars had bench seats, not buckets.
Mm-hmm.
So you had a whole car seat to spread out on,
Mm-hmm.
but you were watching G-rated movies, and you weren't getting any instructions on the greater temptations of life like you are now, and you could mind your business more. And your other things, I could tell you I never saw, actually probably still never seen marijuana or cocaine or other drugs. And growing up in high school and that, you talked about it, and there were people that did, but you didn't see that kind of stuff. And you didn't go to a movie and seeing people half nude, and everything was really a lot different in terms of what you were doing. And you were dealing with adults. My parents were married right during the Depression. People really don't even realize that what that was now. Not having a job, not having any money, and not having any food. And other people who were your next to adults had been to war. And then they came home and led a normal life and started having a family and worked and progressed and got over it. Now we don't seem to be able to get over everything because of a lot of other exposure. And as far as technology, you had a dial phone. You know, you didn't have what you have. I had a good friend right after we got married, and he worked for a finance company downtown LA, and he was a programmer. He had joined the Air Force to go through 4 years to be taught to become a programmer. So he's a programmer down there. We're going to go to a Dodger game one night. I said, I'll come and pick you up at work, then we'll go to the game. Okay, oh hey, you want to see our great big computer room? Holy smokes. Great big room. It was hotter than heck with all these noisy computers going and all these women sitting there doing like on a typewriter with key punch cards to put the information in the computer. You see, and that was in the 60s, which hardly exists anymore, right? It's when your parents were born. So things are a lot different now, and now you got little bitty kids. If you have a problem with a computer, you ask them how to show you how to work your phone as an old person. So life is way, way, way different in terms of what you have. But it also boils down to the same things that are basic.
Were you a technology person when you were younger? Say like
No.
Middle age?
No. You know what? When I was in the insurance and investment business, I had a computer right in that room in there, and I did all my stuff, and I made presentations, and I did that with what I was doing. I never wanted to play games. I didn't go in and play computer games, and I didn't go explore the internet. I just didn't want to go do that. I just never have. I'm not technology. And when I was doing aircraft parts, we had millions of parts. I could go find them all. But I didn't sit and play computer games if I didn't have anything to do. And it's the same with my phone right now. I'll do Facebook a couple times a year, and maybe Instagram. Is that what it's called?
Yeah,
I'll do that, but I don't do that all the time. I have never made a post. I make comments to my other people, like I see your stuff, and I'll make a comment, a smart aleck comment, to show you how much I care about you, but I don't make posts. They'll say, Derryl, and if you look at Mammoth Pools, you know how many pictures you'll see of me? Maybe one, maybe two.
Oh, I think you're all over.
Oh, do you?
Yeah, lots of people.
Not the ones that get put on me by my wife. She's taking pictures of everybody else.
She's taking selfies, maybe.
Yeah, no, I'm not a technology person. I'm a throwback. I'm old.
Yeah, you might have seen on Instagram, I think, recently, after Mammoth Pools, there were a lot of just Derryl posts.
You want to know what was really meaningful was the one put on by Cole. Did you see that one?
I did see that one. That's what I was thinking about.
The one that Cole put on let me know that he cared. Okay? Very, very much. And it makes me hardly wait till the next time we're all together again. I might be in a wheelchair at the rate I'm going. But no, I see things that really mean a lot to me. And it does mean a lot of my grandchildren, my grandsons, and the time I get to spend with them when I do. But that was very meaningful.
I can tell you for sure, myself and the older boys, you're very loved. So you never need to worry about that.
Well, that's
those
great.
Those were some good pictures and a very nice.
Well,
wrote up a nice thing.
You see, because of my life as a kid, my family went on one vacation before my dad died, and that was a car trip to Idaho to see relatives. And I always said, when I have my own kids, I don't want them only to know that I left in the morning and I came back in the evening and I read the paper and I sat there and then went to bed. I wanted my own kids to know me for more, and I think they did, because we had stuff. When we went on vacation, they were all there, right? And that was the value of people say, "Oh, your boat, oh, your motorhome." I say, you know what? When we loaded up, every one of my kids was there,
Right.
and a few extras. It wasn't like we want to stay at a friend's house for the week, and I don't know what they were doing. No. So the family life was very important, because it wasn't exactly that for me. But I had other people who had a family life who helped me. Okay? So that was. And that's probably the most enjoyable thing to me, is that. And you know how much I enjoy it.
Have you ever been an art guy?
Art?
Yeah.
No, I can barely write. I can write, but I'm not an artist.
What about viewing art?
Huh?
Like viewing art.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. I can appreciate art. And it was like now that I'm involved in this quilted. I don't quilt or sew, but I can show you pictures of quilts. Like when we were up in Utah, we went to museums, and there were quilts in my great-grandmother's. She has a display in the Capitol Building Museum of her own medical life quilted in there.
And any medium you particularly like? You know, film, music, any.
Okay, music.
Like
I never graduated to rock and roll.
Okay.
When I was in high school in the mid-50s, Elvis came out.
Oh,
Took
boy.
me a few years to be able to want to listen to him.
Uh-huh.
I was Frank Sinatra, Perry Como, Doris Day, those kind of people, and instrumental. You know, Robin used to always say, "Dad, put music with words on your car radio." I was making him listen to just instrumental. And that's what I listen to now. I still do. If I can't find it, half the days I drive all over the place, I never turn on my radio now, because you can't find anything really that I like.
I'll have to give you something, a CD maybe.
Yeah.
Because I hear the same thing from my girlfriend and other people. Stuff about where are the words. But so like blues and jazz and things like that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. See, when I grew up, you could understand the words that the singers spoke. And they were almost G-rated also. You know, it was easier, but when I'd go on a date, you'd pull up in a girl's house when you'd bring her home, and you'd sit and listen to the radio for a while. It was nice, soft stuff.
Yeah, simpler.
Kissing music.
Kissing music.
Kissing music.
I get the sense, I have a question here that says, what are you most proud of within your personal and professional life? Although I think I expect you to talk about family. So you're most proud of your children. And
Probably it's family, the results of your children, their family lives. Some of them, I'm a little regretful. A few of them because of their lifestyle now.
Mm-hmm.
Not you,
Mm-hmm.
but some of them are pretty.
Mm-hmm.
What I consider, and I look at some what would be great grandchildren because of their parents' life and the way they live. When these kids turn teenagers, I am a little worried.
Yeah, they've got a hard situation, maybe.
Yeah,
The
well,
little ones.
they have approval
Mm-hmm.
of certain things that don't help you very much.
Mm-hmm.
They're bright little children,
Mm-hmm.
but they see the language, they see the lifestyle, they see everything that's going on there.
Mm-hmm.
And I give credit to their dad who bailed on them all.
Mm-hmm.
You know, went over the back wall for the woman behind him. So, parenting is very, very important, and the example that parents give you is very important. Let you know what maybe you should or should not do.
Other than family, maybe what's something in like your sort of professional life, or maybe a more a specific thing that you're most proud of? So obviously family, but something maybe more.
Well, your professional life, I don't think you hurt people or took advantage of them, alienated them. Church-wise, I think I've contributed quite a bit because I've taken young boys and I've paid a lot of time and helped them. That was probably a plus because sometimes you had people that were a little bit like me, not that easy, but they didn't have a lot of good influence and you were able to help out somewhat. Nothing, totally remarkable except some people you have a lot of really strong bonds with. I think I do.
You're a pretty well-known character, and there's a lot of, what's the phrase? Sort of. I'm gonna have to start over because I'm looking for a word. What's it called when there's like a big character, like legacy or something? There's a reputation or something. All right.
Okay, I'll tell you one thing. It's like if you were to go to the dunes when we go, and the Roselles are there. All right, they came from a really strong family. Their dad was our bishop. Paul and John both have 6 kids each. They all show up at the dunes. And you know what? It's pretty close to, I tell them that when we're all down together, there's 4 generations. I'm not the grandparent or the great-grandparent, but it's pretty close. Okay. I've been involved with them. I was a scoutmaster in '68 when John turned 12. And I had him as a Boy Scout, an Explorer Scout, had him as a priest. We built buggies together. We've gone together. We've done things. And we got to the point where they'd come over when they had a problem with a buggy, a motor or something, and I was able to help them. And that I learned that all myself. But people say, oh, how about, I have people that call me now. Hey, Derryl, we're out the lake. We can't get this to run. What can we do? And it's not like I'm a real mechanic, but I built all my own stuff. And you just learn stuff, and you try to share that and show that in every way you don't have to be a total dependent. But they're very close and they're good friends. Their boys, almost treat me like a grandparent. John's do. And they say, and I have others like that over the years that we spent a lot of time together. So probably my greatest thing would be that, if you want to say, what have you accomplished? Other than that, heck.
I remember my question. You're a well-known character, and there's sort of, the myth, the legend of Derryl, at least in our family, for sure. Right? You're certainly well known as a sort of a man's man, very loving, a fixer, a pseudo mechanic, a jokester, things like this. What do you think people don't see in you that you wish they saw more of?
I don't know. I don't know.
You feel it matches pretty good, the way you are and the way...
Yeah, okay, you want to hear one thing?
Yeah. I'll hear anything.
See, I have my problems, right? Stories.
Of course.
And one of them is I remember almost everything.
Uh-huh.
Okay, in 1985, your mother came home from BYU during the summer. We're going to Mammoth Pools. She brought a friend from up there who was a guy, but he had a boat, and they'd go to water skiing all the time up there, so she brought him home for the summer. But then a lot of other families in our ward went, and we had 2 new families that went. And one of them, the woman was she just watched and looked around. So when we got up there, we drove up, and they say, when are we going to leave? I'd say 4 o'clock in the morning. Mm-hmm. See, I'd always say, let's leave at 4, so we get there and we have the whole day. So they go up there, and while we're there, they say, oh, where shall we park? Well, now Robin's in charge, wherever we park. Mm-hmm. But then it was me. So we're sitting there, and so this one woman, her name is Gloria Kepler, she comes over, she says, I've noticed there's kind of a pecking order here. Like who says do what and who says that. Well, who do you think is, and all that. So they say, oh, that's Derryl's probably number 1. So I became known as the head pecker. Uh-huh. One of the things is the company that we bought motor parts from, Clay Smith Cams, their logo was a woodpecker with a cigar on it. Yeah.
What's his name? We're talking the...
Yeah.
Do you remember the
Well, it was called Clay Smith Cams.
Oh,
Clay Smith Cam, but he had this. So, and I always had a shirt that had the woodpecker on it, because we'd get the camshaft to put in our boat motors. Mm-hmm. So for a long time, I was known as the head pecker. Well, that's kind of, you're in charge here. So Craig Allred, he was one of my boys, and now he's old. Well, he's probably older than your mother by a year. Mm-hmm. So a year ago, we go to a funeral of his dad, and his mother-in-law was there. I hadn't seen her for a long time. I go over and say, hey, remember me? I'm Derryl. She said, oh no, I remember your name. You're the head pecker. So you see, certain things, it can take 2 connotations, right?
Yeah.
And it was more like your pecking order.
Yeah.
But you could be with all the boys,
A little more lewd.
Yeah. But you look at, when you say, oh yeah, you're this or you're that, but you had certain things that you did because certain things that you did perform. Mm-hmm. And when we had to fix something or do something, a lot of times I was the guy. Mm-hmm. But it's good to have friends that respect you and need you.
Certainly.
Good to have friends. They're almost all gone.
Are they?
Not totally, but you don't see them as often. It's not. A lot of your peers are passing away.
Mm-hmm. That's how it goes.
Yeah.
Well, we're sort of wrapping this up. Is there anything you want to talk about?
No.
Anything else?
No.
Any grandpa wisdom?
Just do what you're supposed to do.
Well, I really appreciate you letting us come here and take this video and talk with us. And I can't speak for Sam, but I love you. It's been great having you as a grandfather. You've been a great influence in my life. We appreciate you.
Well, I appreciate and love all of you. And, I joke with you sometimes at certain times, like I told your brother, when you're going to get a girlfriend, I worry about if you're gay. We joke about that.
Yeah,
so I'm happy he's got a female friend now. But it's all part of the program, okay? Mm-hmm. It's all part of the deal where the family just keeps growing and getting bigger, and we can't all be together again. So you say, hey, and I want you to know I think your little partner is a cutie, and she's cool.
Very.
So it's important, the choice. And you guys probably know more about each other because you've gone together for a long time. But, no. So just keep on progressing.
Keep on working.
That's right.
Thank you.
You're welcome. I hope I didn't mess up.
Did great.
Okay.
Rolling. 3, 2, 1. Hi, Grandma.
Hi.
How you doing?
I'm doing fine. How are you doing, Troy?
I'm pretty good.
Good.
Can you, what's your name?
Sue Ann Hill.
And when were you born?
November 27th, 1940.
Where?
In Pueblo, Colorado.
Tell me a little more about that.
Well, I was born there, but I don't remember too much of that because I only lived there for 5 years. And then my mother divorced my father, and we moved to California.
Okay, so you were 5 then?
I was 5.
Okay. So you came to California with your mother?
And my 2 sisters.
Oh, okay. Are they older or younger?
Older.
Sisters? How much older?
We're all 2 years apart.
Okay. Awesome. So you come to California. Where in California?
We actually moved to Downey, California, but we lived with my Aunt Iris Devaney, and I actually had a bed in her garage. Was all there was to have.
So would you say you grew up in Downey?
I would say yes, Downey and Pico Rivera.
Okay. So what was it? How was it growing up in your household? So you had a single mother, or did she remarry?
Well, we came in 1945, and then my mother actually remarried to Bob Evans, and that was in 1948. So just those amount of years we were without a dad.
Okay. And what was it like growing up in your house? You had your sisters, and were you middle class or were you lower class?
I would say we were only, middle class, maybe in the beginning even lower than middle class. My stepfather had a gas station and just an average income.
And your mother was stay at home?
Now, my mother, her whole life had a lot of different jobs, but she worked at All American, she worked at the golf course, she always had other jobs to supplement income.
Okay. And where'd you go to school?
Elementary schools and everything in Pico Rivera.
Okay. Were you a good student, or?
Oh yes, I was A's and B's. Mm-hmm.
So how would you characterize your childhood before high school?
Before high school, I would say that it was very hard. It was very hard on my mother, everything that my mother went through. And to be perfectly honest with you, the 5 years that I was in Pueblo, Colorado, I can only remember one thing, and that was when I was in kindergarten and I accidentally hit my kindergarten teacher with a snowball. And that thought's always been with me, but nothing else that I can remember of Pueblo, Colorado. And then growing up in Pico Rivera and Downey, those were okay years.
Nothing notable?
Nothing super big.
And were you, what kind of child were you?
I would say I was assertive, outgoing, fun, happy.
You weren't a problem child?
No.
That's good. And were your of your sisters, who was the Was there a troublemaker?
No, my parents always used to tell us that Joan was the pretty one, Lorraine was the kind one, and I was the smart one. So I thought that my whole life.
Uh-huh.
You know, that was a confidence builder.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's great. So then, going into high school, how was that? Were you continually a good student? And
I was always a good student, and I loved being in the student body and activities. I was a song leader one year and a yell leader another year, and I was always in student government. So I was very active that way versus my two sisters. They weren't involved in school activities like that. Although my oldest sister did get homecoming queen.
you'll have to give us a moment. Something bad
Okay.
is happening.
Oh, okay.
Can you just turn the volume all the way down on it?
If I do, then I can't hear anything.
Okay.
The weird part is that it's not coming out of the headphones, it's only coming out of the computer.
Can you just open up System Processes and close it?
You don't know how to right click here. Is it 2 fingers?
You can click it. It's in the bottom. You can click.
Oh, no.
Yeah, you got it. Test manager.
I don't know
Sorry.
if that'll
This
stop.
beeping or this
Yeah,
noise.
that's fine.
Beeping.
Oh, 2 fingers. It's mouse.
All right, we'll see if that works. Okay. Ready? Are we good? Yeah. Yep. Okay. Testing. Okay. I'll re-ask that question, or well.
okay.
So, your high school years. How were your high school years? Were they very positive? And
I was very active in school activities. A song leader one year, a yell leader another year, and then in the student body government. So I was very active.
And did you have like summer jobs and stuff like that, or how'd you spend your summers?
Yes, I did. We had to help with my mother, and I worked at Newberry's in Downey, and that was the only time I can remember my real father ever coming back to see me. And he came to Newberry's and purposely came into the department I was working in, introduced himself, and then he left. And then I found out later that the reason why he had come to call on us was to verify that we all were working so that he wouldn't have to pay child support anymore.
And was that was the last time you ever saw him?
That was the last time I ever saw him.
Wow.
Yeah.
Was that hard for you, or was it not a big deal?
Well, at the time, I hadn't seen him in all those years, so I didn't care.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay. And were boys in the picture in high school?
Yes, I had a boyfriend my sophomore year, and I actually went with him for like 4 years.
Oh wow.
And he only had one thing that I didn't like, and that he was not a member of the church. And then later when I met Derryl was very much like Bill Kelly, but he was a member of the church and a returned missionary.
Double whammy.
So it was perfect.
That's good. Were you raised in the church from the start, or did your parents
Yes.
convert? Or
Yeah.
were they raised in it as well?
Yes. My mother was not active, but her whole family and Iris, when we lived with her, yeah, they were all active.
Okay.
My mother didn't get active till she was 65.
Any notable coming of age experiences in high school, or were those more of a 20s thing?
No, my senior year, I really wanted to go to college, and I had taken all the college prep courses. And that summer, I had saved enough money to go to BYU, but I was only able to go one semester. And then that was in 1958, and my parents moved to Brea, and they couldn't afford to pay for me at college. So I came back and then went to Fullerton College. And that's my one regret. My one regret is that I never got to finish my college.
So you went to Fullerton, and when did
Cal
you
State,
stop?
yeah. When it was only a JC, only 1 year.
Oh, I see. So you went to BYU for a semester.
Yeah.
Fullerton for
Yeah.
a year.
Yeah, and then I ended up having to work.
What did you want to study?
I kind of thought just education. I thought I wanted to teach. But in my lifetime, I have done several different jobs that I have enjoyed, and it's because I didn't do that. I did find fulfillment. I found that one job at a time was like fun for like 4 or 5 years, and then I'd try something else.
That's good. I think you would have made a great teacher.
I would have loved it.
It's hard to say, you know, when you look back, you know, or it's hard to regret things because you never know.
Yeah.
Because things went well.
Yeah.
So you graduate high school.
Mm-hmm.
What comes next?
Well, then I started working, and over a period of time, I ended up working actually at the elementary school that was just right by my house at Pico Rivera. So that was the first school type job I had. And then I had a couple other, you know, different type of jobs. But my biggest thing has been real estate. I've been in the real estate business for a long time. And now I'm actually, I can't remember the word. Anyway, I don't have to gain any more hours. I'm in, what's the word they use? Anyway, honorary. So, and have done well. And it's fun because I have 3 daughters that have gone into it too. So that's been fun. But I also, I had my own first stop party shop, a wedding referral place, and worked for the school district for 21 years. So.
And what was your first job at the school at Pico Rivera?
Secretary.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yes, you've had a lot of different jobs. So that's a lot of jobs. You've been secretary, party shop.
A realtor, a broker. Had my own visit. Went for my brokers, and some of the things that were really fun for me was the florist business and photography.
Tell me more about both of those. I didn't know this.
Yeah, when I went to Fullerton College, I really got interested in the photography classes, and a lot of the assignments and everything that we had is the reason why I have so many pictures of you kids when you were all little, and I really loved doing it. As a matter of fact, the college sent me out on some jobs because they thought I was good enough to do it too, so that was really fun. But I needed work that I could, really get paid for.
And then florist? You were a florist? You had a florist? What happened there?
You mean Florence, my mother?
No, florist.
Oh,
But
well,
I didn't know your mom's name was Florence.
oh yeah, my mother's name is Florence. No, first stop party shop. What happened was we did flowers and weddings for people, and everybody, they didn't want the referral end of it. They wanted us to come and do the work. So that didn't last very long, but it was a fun thing. We wanted people to sign up, like Alicia's Catering and PC Flowers, but it worked out that when we would go and do one, then they would want us to do it. It was just a lot of hard work for the amount of money you got.
Yeah, weddings sound difficult, very demanding.
They're a lot of work. And there are times when you just don't make everybody happy.
So I think we've gotten too far ahead. Coming back, so it sounds like you've already met Derryl at this around here.
Yeah.
So tell me a little more about meeting Derryl. You told me he was like was name Bill?
Bill Kelly.
He was like Bill Kelly, but he was a missionary and a member.
Yeah.
Tell me about meeting Derryl.
I had actually known him when we had lived in Downey with Iris, but he had always had a girlfriend too. He had gone with Lanny Barrett for like 4 or 5 years. But when he came home, she had already met someone else. And so at that particular time, we had gone out. And then when he came back, found out that she'd had another boyfriend. We started dating. He dated other girls too. But no, the minute we kissed, I knew he was the one.
So how soon, around how long did you guys date before you were engaged?
Oh, it was probably a year. Yeah.
Proposal? What was that like?
Well, now did you ask him that?
I did not ask him.
Okay.
I realized I should.
Because he remembers those things way better than me. Yeah, I just remember going up Mulholland Drive over here and him asking me, but on our way to my mom and dad's house here on Puente, and then he asked them if he could ask me to marry him. No, I don't. Yeah, he remembers the details. I don't.
He is a detailed guy.
He's so detailed.
Yeah. So you get married to Derryl.
Uh-huh.
And you have have Shelley in 63.
64, 63, 64. Yeah, we got married in 62.
Okay, so 2 years later you have Shelley.
Yeah.
And then for
17
10 years,
months later we had Susan, then 3 years, the next 2, and then 3 years later Trish.
so over the course of 10 years about,
Yeah.
you have 5 daughters, and that sounds like it must have been a blast.
A blast.
Also a lot of
It's
work.
very expensive. Well, every time we had another girl, we thought was going to be a boy.
Uh-huh.
And so after we had the 5th girl, I figured, okay, we could end up with 10 girls. So that's why we stopped.
Tell me a little bit about having Shelley, right? First child. What was that whole experience like? Was it all it was cracked up to be?
Well, Shelley was a very busy little girl and always had something going on, even as a toddler. And then even as she grew up, the first time that I was ever really frightened by her was she was 5 years old and in kindergarten, and she had come home and I hadn't gotten home yet, and she was cooking tortillas on the stove with the fire on and 5 years old. And so she's always liked cooking, and of course she still does. But raising all girls is, the dad really has to walk on eggs.
Mm-hmm.
There's always a time of the month that's the wrong time of the month.
And how old were you when Shelley was born?
Oh, I was 23.
And did you feel, how were you feeling when you found out you were pregnant?
I was thrilled. Because before that, I had a miscarriage that I was really disappointed about. So when I got pregnant again, I was thrilled, yeah. In those days, people had their children younger, and we all got married younger. And nowadays, a lot of kids aren't even getting married, so.
Well, in our family, it's different, right? Our family, we still got a lot of young marriages.
Yeah.
And people having kids, it's great fun.
Yeah.
So 23 of Shelley, and there's some phrase about how parents, when they have their first child, they feel like they did a great job. And when they have their second child, they think, wait, these two children are so different. Maybe I'm not so, involved. So the daughters are obviously all very different.
Very.
Was that...
They're very different, and probably the toughest time was after having 4. Derryl and I each could have 2, hold on to 2, and there was always that 5th one that we couldn't hold on to. But no, and they couldn't be more different, and they never would have been friends in high school. They weren't the same personalities.
Mm-hmm.
Although they get along fine now. They still argue once in a while, but for the most part, it's been a real joy.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's true when they say to have a girl, you will always have the daughter. Mm-hmm. And with a lot of men are not always that close after they marry and move on with their families. I don't know, since I never had any guys.
Mm-hmm. I'm just imagining it must have been a wild house, they're not that spread apart, or maybe a bit, but, through high school and middle school and a house full of girls. But how would you characterize, the way you and Derryl raised them?
Well, I would say probably the hardest part was financially. We always needed money. We always had to live paycheck to paycheck. And so that's the reason why I always ended up, getting other jobs and adding to the income. I really think that's the most stressful, is the money you have to raise that many kids. And I've always felt bad that I didn't have the money to put my girls through college, all of them through college, because that was something I really wanted. Mm-hmm. And they pretty much put themselves through college.
Mm-hmm. Tough girls.
Yeah, strong.
Mm-hmm. Did the money situation change once all or most of the girls had left the house? Were you and Derryl able to get a little more comfortable?
That's true. Even though all of them at one time or another have come back and lived with us, But to be truthful, now that I'm retired, this is the first time in my entire life that I don't worry about money. And it's because I have a pension from the school and Social Security. And I don't have to work. I mean, I do substitute once in a while when school's going and we don't have this pandemic, but it's the first time in my life that I never have worried about money.
How's it feel?
That part's really nice.
How are you spending your days?
Well, lately we've had a lot of great grandkids here and vacations and stuff, so they've been fun, but now it's kind of slacking down now that school's going to be starting.
Yeah, this whole COVID thing is crazy.
Yes.
Let's see. Let's go back a little bit. So, well, no, it's funny. You're blowing through these questions real rapid, and and Derryl is all, he's very slow and with all this detail. So I'm running out of questions by the time I come up with them.
Well, good. I said, is this going to take long?
Well, you tell me. I'll just keep going until
No.
you can signal to me.
Oh no. Okay, we're
when
fine.
You want to start wrapping up, but I don't know. What should we talk about? What do you?
I think the hardest thing that you have to watch as it happens is when you're watching your kids be adults, and you watch where their mistakes are made, and your heart breaks because you feel for them when things happen. And it's just like Susan, who lives with us now. I mean, she's been married, twice. She had 4 great kids with the first husband, but it's heartbreaking because you know that they've had a hard time, and you feel for that every time. When Shelley got divorced, same thing. So even as old as they are, they're still your kids, and you still worry about them all the time.
So it hasn't gotten easier in that sense?
No, in that sense, no, you still worry. You don't physically have to, like, every minute of the day. But yeah, you still worry about them. And you do church-wise also, because the way we believe in the church, we want to be together eternally as a family. And you want everyone to live that way so that that can happen. And so it's hard to accept the fact that not everybody agrees with that. They're not, and it's their free choice. It's their choice. They have free agency.
Yeah, that seems like a really hard thing because, like, from their perspective, it can be, it's, I think differently from you. And from your perspective or from someone in the church, it's about, right, being together forever.
Mm-hmm.
And so it can be hard to sort of navigate that thing. I imagine that is difficult because some people in the family aren't members.
Mm-hmm.
Do you have any more thoughts on that? I feel like that's a real hard thing. What would you say to young Sue?
What would I say to you?
Freshly married Sue.
Oh, freshly married. Okay.
Married. What advice would you give?
Let's see. Probably don't sweat the small stuff. Derryl and I are very different. We have very opposite, and it's not that we're right or wrong, but I could say it's black, he could say it's white, and it might be really gray, but we just totally look at most things opposite. So that's compromising has been a hard thing. And I do think arguing when your kids are young, I think arguing does affect your kids. I think they feel the brunt of that when they hear the bickering back and forth. So, whereas a couple of my daughters have married their best friend, and they don't bicker like that.
Yeah, every relationship is different.
Different, yeah.
Do you think you and Derryl have gotten better at negotiating over time?
Well, you would think after this many 58 years, but yeah, that we either that or just like keep my mouth shut and then we're fine.
Yeah, when things change.
Don't voice my opinion.
You get better at something,
yeah.
And worse at other things.
Yeah. I think one of the biggest things is when you're young and with a girl or sex is so important. Sex is such a big thing. And what you find out in life as you go along and the older you get, that is one of the least important things. It really is. And then you hit a time in your life when you're not even doing that anyway. I mean, and if you don't have a good relationship, yeah, you have nothing.
Yeah, there's more to being more to look for in a partner.
Yeah.
Just a couple things.
Yeah. So do you think it's important when you're in a relationship to be married? Or do you think that's not important?
I don't understand the question.
Well, like a lot of young people today only just go with girls, guys and girls, you know. They don't feel the need to get married. And I don't know if if there's a financial reason behind that or an emotional reason behind that. But it's like Kaylee and Andrew. They're very happy with, you know, they bought a house together, and still not married.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's probably like a youthful thing. They call it, what is it, the window? The longer you date someone without getting married, the higher the divorce rates are. And they think it's because when you date for a really long time, you're sort of playing marriage, but really the door's open.
It's open. Okay.
And so you think all the time about waiting to
do that.
So I think it's probably a youthful thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I certainly am very pro-marriage.
Yeah.
This isn't about me, Grandma. We're trying to talk about you.
Well, the thing is, it's a totally different world that you guys are growing up in, and we wouldn't even think of living with someone, you know, without getting married.
Yeah,
when you fell in love, you got married. That was just, and the other thing, when I was young and having kids, 4 kids was just like an average family. Some of my best friends had 8 and 9 kids, so I felt like I really pushed it when I went to 5. But nowadays, if they even have 2, it's enough.
Yeah, 2.5 I think is the average or something.
I don't know if I'd want that half.
Yeah. Yeah, how do you think, you know, there's a lot of obvious ways in which the times have changed from when you were a teenager or just young people, when you were young and young people today. A lot of obvious things are like computers and social media and, you know, the big ones. But what do you think are some important ways in which the world of teenagers and very young people has changed in a way that you worry about and a way you don't think they see?
I think it's a big thing. The communication thing is big. And even after working in a school and everything that I see on Facebook, the bullying thing and how it takes people's confidence away. Out of 19 grandkids, we'd never had a grandchild come up with any physical disability. And then out of the 9 great-grandkids, to have two of them were autistic, that was a real eye-opener, because more and more kids are being born like that with disabilities, and that makes it extremely hard on a marriage. But there's more and more things that those parents are doing that is causing, you know, alcohol fetal syndrome. There's a lot of reasons for that happening. So that's scary. But technology, it has as many good things as it does bad.
Great power.
Yeah.
Great responsibility.
Yeah, it's just like little Hayden. She had her little phone on. She's, 4 years old. And she's watching constantly this family show. And her mother knew it was fine. So she had checked it out. But they can go on YouTube at that age and find a lot of really ugly stuff. And that's scary. And human trafficking, all that's going on right now, it's sad.
Very. And do you think, when you sort of think of the part of the world that doesn't keep the word of wisdom, the part of the world that, engages in sort of, darker activities or, inappropriate activity, do you think the amount of people doing that type of thing has increased or do you think that today we're just more exposed to it? Like when you were young,
Yeah.
A teenager today can go on their phone and see a whole lot of
Yeah,
stuff.
yeah.
Do you think it's all been sort of the same? It's just about
Well, I think we've always had it. There's always been evil. And I mean, the reason why my mother left my father was he was an alcoholic. So, yeah, the vices have always been out there and matter of choice. I do think there's a lot more of it, but it's like you said, people are they're more exposed to getting that knowledge of what's going on. So, it's, something can happen in another part of the world and immediately it's on the TV. So, yeah, that has a lot to do with it, but Satan's powerful.
Certainly. I imagine if I ask you what you're most proud of, it would be family related.
It's family, period.
Period.
Yeah.
I think that's a safe answer and the best answer.
Yeah.
What non-family things would you say you're most proud of?
What non-family things? I think probably the accomplishments I made that were just on my own, that it took a lot of effort on my part to keep at it and move forward and onward and tackle problems that were hard at the time.
Can you tell me about maybe one of these type of really difficult problems you overcame?
Well, I think when I was pregnant with my 5th kid, and we had no money, and our bills, we weren't getting our bills paid. That was a really hard time in my life. And after I had her is when I decided that I had to quit praying that someone else would do something different, but that I could do something different that would make that change. And then it was right after that I started studying real estate. So I think finances has been my hardest thing.
And you mentioned earlier that you wish you had finished school.
Yeah.
And they've done this research and stuff, and they say that when people do regret things, they usually regret the things they didn't do as opposed to things they did do.
Yeah.
Do you think that's accurate?
Well, I even went back at age 50 and tried to get my education. Just recently, I was reading a lot of articles on Pathway and how many young people are doing Pathway right now because it's so easy and it's all online and they can still get the same credits. And I think, hey, yeah, go for it. Now, at this time in my life, there's no purpose in me doing it. But I do think the knowledge that we gain here on this earth is what we're going to take with us. I still think education's important.
What have been some of the most important relationships in your life outside of your marriage and that with your children?
Well, probably my church callings, the things that I've learned by different positions I've held in the church. When I was Relief Society president over the women's organization, it was very insightful to see how other people lived. And I would be called out to go to a family to take a food order. And it would be very interesting to see how they lived, and they needed the church to pay for their groceries. So I would say that most of it has always been through different callings I've had in the church. Recently, I was just released from a 1.5-year church service missionary where I did genealogy research at the library, and that was very, very interesting because when you look back and see what your ancestors have done and what they went through, I never could have been a pioneer. I could never have been a pioneer. My husband could have, but no. So that's been very enlightening.
Yeah. What callings have you had? You're the Relief Society president.
And probably one of the most fun was when I taught in Relief Society. That was fun. And then right now, if we were having church, we teach the 10 and 11-year-olds. But those of all, Relief Society probably was my favorite.
You're certainly a well-known character in the family. obviously. There's the myth, the legend of Sue.
Oh yeah,
Right?
like Derryl isn't.
Yeah. Like I posed a similar question to Derryl.
Yeah.
When people think about you, right, you're obviously very loving, very fun, very funny, sometimes fierce, right?
Yeah.
What do you wish? Is there anything that you wish people saw more of in you? Like, do you see any disconnects between the way you feel you are and the way people think of
What
you?
people think. Well, probably as a younger person, I was probably too outspoken, and but if I got labeled that, I deserved it. But there's not a whole lot of regrets that I have on the way people view me.
You feel it all matches up pretty good?
Yeah. I'm fine.
That's good. Good for you, yeah.
Let's be done.
Do you have any last pieces of wisdom? What would you any general big world advice?
Oh, big world advice. Well, I think as long as we always listen to the prophet in the church, and if we always read the scriptures and do what we know is right and live right, that whatever happens, we will be able to handle. The Heavenly Father knows us. He knows what we can handle, and we're not going to get more than we can handle, and we just have to prove ourselves and keep moving forward. And I would give that same advice to my kids, my grandkids, and great-grandkids.
Wonderful.
Okay.
Well, thank you so much.
Uh-huh.
It's been a pleasure.
Oh, thank you.